Welcome to Soul Talks. I'm here with Danielle Dulsky. Very excited to interview you today. Welcome.
Thank you, Bevan. Very happy to be here.
Awesome. I wanted to interview you because of your soul-driven sacred mission. And so first of all, this show is for empowering soul-centered entrepreneurs to be their true soul self and live their dreams. And I thought that you fit really well with this. Thanks for... Danielle Dulsky is the author of Woman Most Wild, and she's an artist, yoga teacher, energy worker, and founder of Living Mandala Yoga teacher training programs. She leads women's circles, witchcraft workshops, and energy healing trainings, and lives in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. And you can find her online at danielledulsky.com. Really happy to have you here. What is a witch?
Okay, so a witch is anyone that meets both of two conditions. Well, first I should say that any witch would give you a different answer. But my answer is that a witch is somebody that first of all practices witchcraft. So you can practice witchcraft without being a witch, because witchcraft is more of a practice. It's a craft, it's an art. Right, and then but then the second condition is you have to have claimed the name witch for yourself. So that's the piece. So you've claimed it for yourself rather than have looked for some kind of an external authority to give it to you.
Right? Okay, and you're changing the energy of how people see the word witch, I believe.
Well, I hope so. I mean, as opposed to, I think that there's been witches that are trying to change it for decades, but yeah, as opposed to like the fairy tale twisted-nosed witch that lives in the woods and eats children, I hope that I'm changing people's perspective.
All right, excellent. I'd like to read a little section from Woman Most Wild. It's page 162, so I think it's in a section about heart communication, which caught my eye because I didn't have time to read the whole book before this, but one thing that I do and have been doing for years is connecting deeply with people, and that's why I'm the soul-to-soul connector. So you wrote, "Your spirit self is much like a billion-year-old star. It does not need to be seen and admired in order to exist. But its beauty is so majestic, so flawlessly emblazoned with the cosmic map, that the whole of the world misses out on laying eyes on a great, blindingly impeccable something if you keep it hidden. Let us look upon your God star, woman, even just this once." What does this part mean to you, or is there anything else you'd like to share about it?
Well, it comes from the idea that isn't mine. It's from the work of Bill Plotkin, who talks about this kind of dichotomy between soul and spirit, and how soul is what makes us unique and what separates us and our selfhood, and spirit is what connects us to everything, right? So any spiritual system, I don't like that word, but any spiritual path like witchcraft, it's what kind of binds us together. So the magic really comes from when you unite your individuality, your selfhood, your soul with your spirit.
Very good. Yeah. Awesome. Bill Plotkin wrote a really, really great review about your book. And
he did.
It said, "Who or what is a witch?" So you have answered that. "What if witch identifies resources of the human psyche actively suppressed by Western and many other cultures for millennia, resources that are feminine, sacred, and utterly natural at their roots?" I'll just ask the next question too. What if these resources are essential for the wholeness of all humans and for all life-enhancing cultural transformation, especially at this time of global unrest? It's such a great question, right? And it makes me think, are the rituals in this book only for women, or are they for all people? Right on the face of it.
Yeah, no, I think that they're for everyone. I think that, gender has very little to do with it. And Bill Plotkin said feminine. Feminine's a word that I really resonate with, and I use the triple goddess archetype of maiden, mother, crone a lot in my work. But I work with a lot of people that, when they hear even the word feminine, but also maiden, mother, crone, or words like that, they just kind of feel a little bit tired, right? So to me, it doesn't matter whether you call it feminine or maiden, mother, crone, or anything, because what we're really after are those aspects of the feminine that have been suppressed in society. So, the sensuality, the emotional integrity, our connection to nature, I would call those maiden qualities, but I don't think that you have to. A woman's right to speak and be heard, sacred work, and magical agency, I would call those mother qualities, but I don't think that you need to define them as related to the mother necessarily in order to see that they're really needed in our society. Crone qualities like intuition and psychic ability and dream work and path working, all of that, it doesn't matter whether you associate that with the crone or the intuitive part of the feminine, because it's those qualities that we're after in everyone, and it doesn't matter if it's male or female or anywhere in between. It's just those qualities that we suppress during childhood in our own psyches in order to be accepted, in order to keep from being rejected, that are very much a part of witchcraft, but they're also a part of a lot of different spiritual paths that are doing the work of changing the world right now.
Why did you write this book, Woman Most Wild?
So I work with a lot of different women in various settings. So it isn't only witchcraft circles or teaching covens that I run. I also run teacher trainings and just traditional non-witchy women's circles. And what I noticed over the years is that women who certainly wouldn't identify as a witch, let alone, cast spells or anything like that, when they would do these kind of like gateway practices, like, burn herbs or talk about the essence of the directions, or maybe cast a circle, or just kind of like these little tastes of what are, for all intents and purposes, witchcraft, they would have this sense of like coming home. There would be this feeling of like they've done this before, they know this. And so then inevitably their next question was like, oh, I want more. I resonate with this. I love this. Now, how exactly do I do it? So they would want like a step-by-step plan for how to be a witch. So they would want like this practical answer to something that kind of defies all practicality and has. So that was where the book started. My idea of trying to answer that question of like, how exactly do I embrace my inner witch?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah, it makes sense. Through your work, people were asking for it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. One of the people in your tribe, I believe, Lauren Lavender Love Roberts, she asks, how do you, Danielle, manage to produce so much amazing writing? You are so prolific, and your words are always the exact medicine I need, she says.
Oh, that was nice of her. How do I manage to produce so much writing? Well, I know my brain very well. And I have a pretty good relationship with time. So, for instance, I know that right now, it's winter where I live outside of Philadelphia, so the days are very short, and I know that after really 2 p.m. nowadays, I can't write anything worth anything anybody would want to read anyway. So I know that I have to wake up, not super early, but I have to wake up and kind of write when my brain is alive and creative, just for those few short hours, and then stop once it feels like I'm kind of pushing against a rock wall or whatever. But then I know that if it were spring or, you know, closer to summer solstice, it would kind of be, I could go longer, right? Because my brain works better for a longer period of time. So I think it's, you know, it's efficiency. I know like when my creative window is and how long it is, and I use it.
Oh yeah, that's great. I love that. I can use that too. It's helping inspire me with my prolificness too.
Yeah.
And also what you've touched on there too is wild rhythm, aligning yourselves with the cycles of nature.
Right. Right. It's so important and kind of empowering to know, you know, we're not meant to go all day long, right? And you'll be different. You'll be a different person one season than you'll be in another, and then that way you don't feel like a crazy person when it's 4 p.m. close to winter solstice and it's getting dark and you just feel like going to bed because that's the way it's supposed to be.
So more about this book, right? You're debunking the interpretation that witches are evil villains. And revealing the true nature of witchcraft, an ancient spiritual path that rejects religious dogma in favor of female empowerment and a deep reverence for the earth, which obviously we need because we need to become sustainable. And that in this book, you help reclaim the earth-centered power of aligning with our wildest, freest selves to create an inclusive world for all. So I want to ask you, because I asked why you wrote the book, so then I guess I'll ask how did you get onto this path?
Yeah, so that's a long story.
Yeah.
But
Was there a pivotal moment?
Yes, there was a pivotal moment. My pivotal moment was I had been practicing witchcraft for a few years, and I was 25, and I was getting more and more into it, and I was starting to call myself a witch, but only to myself, right? It wasn't something that I was telling anyone other than those in my immediate family. But I just had a baby, and I lived in a relatively conservative part of Florida, so it certainly wasn't something that you could like. I live in a very liberal area now, so I can just walk down the street and people know I'm a witch and it's fine. But it wasn't that way where I lived at that time. But I just had a baby, and I was having one of those kind of like dark night of the soul moments where you're nursing your baby, and I was probably affected by postpartum depression at that time also. So, you know, nursing the baby, feeling like the loneliest person in the whole world. And I decided, it was like a strategic decision on my part, that I wasn't going to hide it anymore, because I wanted this baby to grow up to be as authentic as possible, right? So I didn't want him to have to hide a huge part of his spirituality, certainly, but any aspect of who he knew himself to be. So I didn't want to be a hypocrite. So if I wanted my child to grow up and be as authentic as possible, then I wasn't going to hide who I was anymore. And so that was my moment.
Did you then be more public about it where you were there, or did you decide to move right away?
Yeah, no, I didn't decide to move right away. The decision was that I wasn't going to hide it anymore. So if anybody was going to ask me about it, I was going to tell them. I owned a yoga studio down there at the time. So there was, you know, I wasn't screaming it from the rooftops that I was a witch, but like I am now. But I wasn't going to, you know, rush to close the doors on my altar or hide all of my books when people came over. And I wasn't going to lie anymore. So it was more that.
Deborah Kampmeyer of Full Moon Films, she says that you, in this book, you speak from deep in your soul to deep in our soul. What has been like one or two of the things that have helped you to be able to communicate like so deeply?
I think writing, like any other art, needs to be, you know, the artist, the writer needs validation. So, you know, needs to be able to see that she's being heard. So I think that, you know, the growth of my writing and the way that it's been accepted has kind of fed off of each other. So you know, I write for a lot of these online outlets that I'm not necessarily being paid, right? I'm not really being paid for writing for these different online magazines, but I get a lot of, you know, feedback that way that has been really important and instrumental. You know, I know the things that I say that I love that maybe people won't resonate with. And so I, you know, not that I feel like I'm being inauthentic about it, but I'll focus on the things that I still feel are very true, but that are also helping, right? Helping and healing. So I think
yeah, that's that intersection. Like, that's your voice, right? That's the intersection of what's true for you and what the audience resonates with.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I think that that's so important. And so that's always what I tell, you know, newer writers that are still kind of doing like the journaling in the dark and not showing anybody what they're writing is, you know, get over that initial fear of, you know, maybe people aren't going to like it, because some people won't like it, but some people will, right? And then that's what keeps you going.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, I did this poll recently where I had two very different profile pictures. One, I'm on the beach, I don't have a shirt on, and so some people assumed I'm not naked, I'm wearing swim shorts. It's just normal beach attire, right? But it's a headshot, so then you can see my shoulders a bit.
Yeah.
And then the other one is in a suit, and it's inside, and it's also black and white. I prefer color.
Yeah.
And so I'm very like empowered on the beach one, because I'm doing what I love, and I don't have my glasses on either, and it's like
Right.
perfect light. It's the sunset. And so yeah, just a couple of people said they really like that they were like, oh, naked or nude. They were like, that's perfect. Like, isn't that the way we want to do business in heaven?
It's
Are you
true.
in that group? Because your profile picture, you're kind of naked, but you're also covering, so it's not inappropriate, right?
Yeah.
You know the one I mean, with the snow falling.
Yeah. Well, you can't be naked on Facebook, right? Or you'll get in trouble.
Yeah, the picture will get taken off.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever worn a suit or anything business oriented. Yeah, that's the way we do business in heaven. Absolutely. I agree with whoever said that.
Oh, awesome. Right. And a lot of people told me they wanted me to put a shirt on or whatever, right? So there was just a couple that liked it without clothes. Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, that's not fair.
But it depends on who your tribe is. Who do you want to work with?
True.
And so
Yeah.
we're revolutionaries, clearly, because you have tattoos, and also the thing with being almost naked in the picture, but that's revolutionary, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think so. I mean, I don't work in an industry where, I mean, I used to teach corporate yoga, and that was as close as I got to like having to cover my tattoos and
Yes.
take my nose ring out.
I know someone that has a corporate yoga studio. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But that's not for me anymore.
All right. Oh yeah. Hmm. What do you love best about your work? So it could be any of the work that you do.
So that's something else that changes according to the seasons, and I guess also my age. so it's changing.
These days are over the last year.
Yeah, these days. So just with the book coming out, I did a lot of traveling, and I got to teach in a lot of different areas, and before that I was very centered in my hometown. So that was interesting. I don't love teaching to large groups of women, but you know, the energy that comes from, you know, all of these kind of strangers coming to one place and maybe casting a circle or raising energy or casting a spell is always really interesting to me. because, you know, these are people that don't know each other and yet have this intense trust to be able to work their magic together and be kind of vulnerable and powerful at the same time. You know, when you're engaged in a ritual, there's this kind of interplay between surrendering to the energy that you're raising and creating it. So there's this like intense power, but then there's also this kind of surrendering of selfhood that happens because you just become part of this circle. So that's what I've been loving. And I think that, you know, I always love that, but it's different when there are people that you know coming together and you're familiar with the space that you're in. That's one thing. But when you go to a totally new venue and nobody knows each other and they're coming together and you get the same palpable energy out of it, you know, there's something to that is, you know, a world changer, I think. So I'm into that right now.
Oh, very cool. I think that's maybe the section of the book that I read, because there's one part where I read a few pages in a row and it was about, I think it was about putting that circle together.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's so important. Especially not only with witchcraft, certainly, but any kind of spiritual path, I think, that isn't necessarily as socially accepted as like the world's religions are, right? Because we can't just go to any corner and see our church like like other people can. So to create a circle where you can really put that kind of mundane conversation about taking your dog to the vet or you know, what you're cooking for dinner alongside the spell casting, like that is everything. Because then that way your craft, your magic, your spiritual path isn't just a like layer of icing that you're kind of slathering on top of the rest of your life, right? It becomes really integrated. So to me, the circle is probably the most important key, because, you know, it helps you not feel disenchanted with your craft when you wake up that morning and you're like, I don't really feel like doing this anymore. I'm just a regular woman. I'm going to give up. And then you think like, clearly it's not for me. But no, it's just that our spirituality cycles like everything else does. But when you communicate that and somebody else says, oh, I felt that way this morning too, then it's like, oh, okay, I'm okay. I can still be a witch. I'm just having an off day.
Yeah, totally. And you can go anywhere in nature and that's your church, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So
But if you want to have community, not just by yourself, then you need the circle.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the business world, it's called a mastermind. And yesterday we had our third meeting of the Soul to Soul Mastermind, and we're at the intersection of business and soul. I'll invite you to a future one if you want to check one out.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely.
It was the best one we had so far, and it was transformational.
Yeah.
And today, instead of letting, I felt less of a need to have other people control me and lower my vibration or waste my time. So I talked with someone, a friend, on the beach as I was walking along. I only had a short time there before I had to come back for this interview, right? So just a little walk on the beach, to be in nature and stuff, hear the waves. So I talked with him just briefly, right? And he started complaining about what was happening in his life, right? And then I cut him off. And I said, I'm not sure what I said. I think I said, I better get going. I only have a short time, right?
Yeah.
So that was great because before I've got into a conversation, right? And then I allow that to just waste all kinds of time. And then the energy is lowered and the consciousness is impure. And then you got to purify it. But that was a waste, right? The group helped a lot. And this, what do you think about dolphins as well?
You know, I love them. I don't have like that special dolphin love that a lot of people do.
I do. That's why that was the first wooden thing that I bought here.
Yeah, how cool. Yeah, in women's circles, we call it the 5-minute whine. Like you're allowed to kind of have that initial like complaining and just getting out, you know, everything that's in the way, basically. But then after that, you have to get down to it.
Oh yeah, and because people want to be heard, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. People want to be heard, and then I think that a lot of times there's, there's those things that they can't say out in the world, and they aren't necessarily what they want to bring into circle, into women's circle, but they have to, they just have to get them out before they could say anything, more meaningful or whatever.
Okay. And it's like dealing with the darkness too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, especially right now, in the Northern Hemisphere, this is the 13th moon cycle. So, we're in that void. We are in like the void of the year, the fertile darkness. And so for creative people, it's probably one of the more challenging times of the year, because our task is to just kind of sit and not do anything and to just be in like that primordial soup where we're just resting in darkness. So, in tantric philosophy, it's that anugraha, the grace, is, that last action of the gods. And what comes after that is the manifestation and the concealment and the creation and all of that. But first comes that, like, just rest in the void and do nothing. And so that's always the way I look at this time of year. And I don't deal with it that well. Like, I'm painting like crazy right now, painting and writing, and I'm not resting at all. But then all of society is telling us to like buy all the presents and go to all the parties and drink all of the alcohol, right? So like to fill that void with as much stuff as possible. So, I'm saying this because circles of all kinds right now are so important, because it is such a challenging time when all of nature is telling us to kind of rest and go into the dark, and all of society is telling us to do the exact opposite.
Mm-hmm. That's maybe why it felt so good to just lie on the beach. Like when I felt all messed up, and it was with a lot of communicating with people, and just then my brain had too much because there's all the interactions. It's more complicated, right, than it needed to be. But then when I lay on the beach and just relaxed, then I felt great again.
Right. You're sinking back into the source of everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great thing to do every day.
Yeah.
Is that a good ritual for our listeners to do at home to awaken their wild woman spirituality, like at this time of year, or is there something else?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if they feel called to do it, if they feel that kind of like psychic overload that you were just describing, I think that there's nothing better than to sit and be. And the caveat is, a lot of times, and I do this too, I'll be like, I'm gonna rest now, but I'll put on music or something, or I'll have some kind of like or I'll check my phone every 10 minutes or whatever, right? So, and that's not the same thing. So like to be in total silence, maybe not necessarily physical stillness, like it's okay to kind of move about the house and do mundane things, but total silence, like no music, like listen to the hum of the electricity that's in your house or whatever, but just total silence, and not looking for like the screen distractions. That's really an awesome 13th moon cycle practice.
Yeah, totally.
Restorative.
Oh, right. Yeah, don't look outside yourself for distraction or entertainment. Like look.
Right.
And then, like, one of the questions your publicist sent, where is the moon currently in its cycle? And can you recommend a simple ritual that our listeners can do at home to awaken their wild woman's spirituality?
Yeah, so what I just said is probably it. It's the waning 13th moon. So on December 17th, I think. Yeah, December 17th is the new long night's moon. So, that's the moon that's around winter solstice. But right now, the moon is waning, and we're still in the void, and we're the days are getting shorter and shorter in the Northern Hemisphere anyway, and we're just, going farther and farther into the dark. So I think, even though we think of witchcraft as something that you have to do, like an action, that now, this lunar cycle out of all 13 all year long is the one where non-doing is the best medicine.
Okay.
Right. So, light a candle and stare at it or something, but don't feel like you need to cast a spell or perform any elaborate ritual right now.
Relax and enjoy life, right?
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
totally relax. Okay. If you could name a single message that your book is offering, what would that message be?
Single message that my book is offering. I think the one practice summary that I like to tell people is to go, and this is in the book, but only briefly in the beginning, is to go back into childhood. Go back into those moments where you really felt like you were the most you could possibly be. Starting in childhood, but then, later. So kind of thinking of like your life chapters. And those moments where, in yoga, it's called bhava, so feeling mind, the moments when your body, mind, and spirit will really yoke together in the same action, whether it was dancing or gardening or staring at a sunrise or watching a campfire, whatever it was. Go back into those moments and then trace the patterns, right? Were you always alone? Were you always in nature? Were you always creating something, right? Or maybe not always, but like a lot of the time. Like, what are the common themes? And then start there. And if there's a lot of nature and the sense of like the ethereal, the sense of magic, then maybe witchcraft is something to explore. And then beyond that, look to the elements that are really dominant in your experience. So for instance, if there was a lot of staring at the fire or watching the sunrise, that's fire. If there was a lot of gardening or like making mud pies or something, that's earth, right? So then look to the elements that you're really drawn to, because that will make your magic and your spellcraft that much more authentic. You start with you start with your selfhood, your soul, and then you go from there. And it's so much more authentic than like copying, another practitioner's spell work or book of shadows or whatever.
Oh yeah, wow. I love that answer. That's awesome. What are the 3 keys to liberating the witch within, and why are they important?
So the first key is wild rhythm. So that's knowing your cycles as they relate to nature cycles. So knowing the way the lunar cycles, but also the solar cycles affect you personally. So like, to use myself as an example, when I was talking about writing, like I know that I'm starting to have less energy right now than I do most of the rest of the year, versus in autumn, I'm kind of at my energetic peak, right? So I know that if I'm going to do any intense rituals or I'm going to plan some kind of like huge group series or something like that, I'll do it in autumn. And I wouldn't do it in summer. Autumn's like my energetic peak, right? So wild rhythm is like looking at, when do you have the most energy? When do you have the least? Are there other common themes in your life? Like, do you always move house in autumn? Or are you always letting go of something in autumn? Or are you always birthing something in spring? Something like that. But not looking at those norms as necessarily being true for you either. So looking at your unique patterns and then going from there, because that's everything. So wild rhythm. And then the second key is wild ritual. So wild ritual, looking at everything that you learned about yourself from wild rhythm, and using that to make your magic and your spellcraft that much more authentic. So a witch's magic is the conversation that she's having with the world about the kind of world she wants the children of the future to live in. So it's looking at your most authentic values, your truest currencies, I usually call them. And that's what gets infused into your magic. So even if it's just a simple prosperity spell, or you're trying to invoke abundance for yourself or something like that, you're still looking at that next layer. Like, what does that really mean for the world? What are you communicating on the larger scale for the global community? And that's how, witchcraft isn't fluffy. So, any spell cast is undergirded by those core values about that you hope to see in the global community. So the witch is the activist, right? So she isn't just kind of casting spells for her own personal gain. She's working her magic for the world.
Okay.
And then the final key is wild circle. So all of those things we were talking about before about putting your magic alongside the mundane and the need for spiritual community and your mastermind group, like all of those things are wild circle. And really, wild circle, out of all three keys, it's probably the more controversial one, at least in the pagan community, because it could be read as me saying that a solitary practitioner is somehow less witch than somebody that has a coven, and that isn't what I'm saying. Because I think that any witch, they go through these ebbs and flows where they really feel the call to solitude, and that might be years where they don't feel like circling with anybody else. So you go through these natural cycles of wanting to work your magic just on your own, and then with the community, and that's as it should be.
Okay, that's great. I love those three keys, and it makes me want to ask you more questions, but then we wouldn't have time for all of them. Like, what kind of world do you want to create, right? Because you mentioned that part. I should also say too, I really like how it merges with something I said in a video where I was talking about a global abundance plan for humanity. It's like, know who you are, right? Be intimate with the infinite. Know your values and beliefs, because you'll have to connect with other people who have the same values or the same reason why, because you'll naturally trust each other, and then you can collaborate with them, thus creating abundance. And it's like, you've got the same thing, be yourself, do your own rituals, right? And then create that circle. And that's the collaborating. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And that keeps you from, I think in any new spiritual path, there's that possibility for spiritually predatory behavior, right? So when somebody's brand new, but particularly women, just because of the world that we live in, when you're brand new to something like witchcraft, you're still looking for somebody to tell you you're doing it right and you're being a good girl, right? And when you've learned enough about your wild rhythm and your magic on your own, then you know what kind of circle you're looking for. You know what kind of mentor you're looking for. And that is everything. Because if it just takes one time to fall prey to somebody that's not good, but presents themselves as very knowledgeable, that will keep you like away from witchcraft for the rest of your life, right? So know enough to stand on your own 2 feet before you go looking for somebody to stand with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really, really awesome. That tip there will save people years, because they can waste so much time, and then you don't know who you are. Like, you get onto the wrong track. So that really makes a lot of sense.
Right. Yeah.
If you've got the time, could you share your vision, like what kind of world that you want to create?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I really believe that there's these people, I've been calling them the death priestesses just because I like that term. But I think that there's people right now like me who don't really necessarily know where we're headed. Like, we don't know. I don't know if we're just gonna all end up being like balls of light that like bump into each other and spontaneously orgasm someday, right? Like, I don't know if that's where we're going. And I think that, the light workers and the healers, that they kind of maybe have a clearer vision about where we're headed. And I personally don't know. So I'm more of like, I know what I don't want in the world. And I know, like, what I'm hoping to kind of resurrect are those aspects of the feminine that I was talking about way back in the very beginning of the interview. So, that connection to nature, the reverence for nature, the desire to make yourself sustainable so that the world is sustainable, sensuality, emotional integrity, being able to just be who you are without somebody saying like, that's not like you, or, like, that's what I feel is kind of the next wave, in women's intuition, feminine intuition, not having psychic powers invalidated, like all of that stuff, I think is kind of like the next step. And what comes after that, I have no idea. But I believe that that's like that's what's on the horizon. And I think that those are the things that witches really work to empower.
Oh yeah, very good. it inspires me to do a soul to soul talk about that, like starting with the vision and then just going wherever it goes from there, to
Yeah.
elaborate from there. What do you think about that idea?
Yeah, I think that's great because, you know, people get stuck on the disagreement, right? Like your ultimate vision for the human community probably wouldn't match mine exactly, but that shouldn't stop us from working together, because right now we probably agree on some of the things that should happen, right? So it shouldn't be that big picture, that you have to completely agree on every single piece of it. It's like, what's the next
Yeah.
step?
Yeah, that's right. And we're all creating our own worlds, and we have to respect the free will of everyone else to create
Right.
their world. Well, I'll share my vision. I
Yeah.
agreed with yours. You'll probably see that in here. My vision is an inspired and thriving world where everyone is free to do what they love, what they're passionate about, and barter and collaborate abundantly. And it doesn't mean get rid of money. It means that these are other ways, right?
Yeah.
Barter and collaborate abundantly, and we all enjoy happiness, health, love, and abundance in all forms. And I have a message for humanity to care about each other, which includes the triple bottom line idea and includes collaborating.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
in my own story, like I worked in an industry where I think the profits were really cared about, but not people, their health, and the environment. So then
Yeah.
it made me feel sick, and then I realized working there, I was like sacrificing other people's health for my living, right? And then later it became more personal, where it actually was my own health, and I got pneumonia, right? And then I got it
Yeah.
completely. Now I'm out of the rat race. I'm very happy about it.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Remind me again, the triple bottom line is
Oh yeah.
people, profit,
Yeah, people and planet and profit. So all three.
planet. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Sustainability.
that.
Awesome. Any last words for our audience?
Last words. Well, so for this lunar cycle rest, I also think it's important to, January 1st comes around and everybody wants to build their vision boards and kind of envision their entire 2018, and we're still kind of in the dark time then, right? So even though it's good to kind of think about it and envision, it's not, this concrete, hardcore, high fire planning time yet. That's more the quickening moon cycle, which is February, and the wolf moon cycle, which is February. So February and March. So, take time and sit in that fertile darkness for as long as you can in order to really repower your creativity for the coming year.
Awesome. Yeah, it would have been better for me to ask that question at the end. I should also ask, because we're sharing about your book, Woman Most Wild, and also, so do you have any free gifts for people, like at your website or anything? Anything for our audience that they can get for free to start getting into the work as well?
Yeah, so I have a lot of writing that's online for free. So, and I also have a list on my website. I have a list of, I think like 20 to 30 different interviews. So I can put this one on there too. but all of that's on there. And yeah, if they follow me on Facebook or whatever, I usually share most of my writing there. But I try to write 2 to 3 articles a week that are free. So yeah.
Yeah, so you're always giving. And this book, I would recommend people get this book because you can see she has a ton of value to help you like step into the new paradigm.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for doing the talk with me today.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Bevan.
I had a great time. Thank you.
Me too.